Hey everybody, video here for you today. This is something I've been looking into for a few days now. I had not heard about this till recently. We are going down to Eastern Serbia. This is the Iron Gates Gorge. This is the Danube River. There is an archaeological site down here called Lepenski Vir. That's what we're going to go check out today, and the story here is pretty fascinating. And this goes right back, could go all the way back to the end of the Younger Dryas period. Let's just take a look around. Here we are inside of the museum, covered up. First researched in 1960. I think that's what I read. Here is an overview of the site, and these homes were designed based on some sacred geometry, and I will leave a link to a video that kind of explains that here down below. But I thought that was pretty fascinating. Also, these little homes here had central hearths, fires, and they had statues nearby them that are pretty fascinating. And here's a look at one of these figures, and we'll take a look at a few more of those. Here on this website, it says Lepenski Vir, a Paleolithic site on the banks of the Danube, is proof that the local culture developed social relations, architecture, and art more than 6,000 years ago. Cultural center of prehistoric world was right here in what is today's Serbia. The culture of Lepenski Vir is around 8.5 millennia old, and it was the cradle of archaeological discoveries that have changed our knowledge about the early Stone Age in Europe. Lepenski Vir is one of the largest and most significant prehistoric archaeological sites from the Stone Age. The dating here goes way back in time. It seems this was a place that people evolved out of caves here, maybe going back to 20,000 BC. But this settlement down on the river, some people date the earliest settlements here to 9,500 BC. 11,500 years ago, the exact end of the Younger Dryas period. This is Atlas Obscura, and I've used them before. They did a story here, shows some of the carvings, some of the homes here with the central hearth. Lepenski Vir buildings have a layout which is based on elaborate geometry of equilateral triangle grid and 60-degree circle sections. It appears that this kind of floor plan was constructed using intricate compass and straight edge technique, indicating that the inhabitants of Lepenski Vir possessed the understanding of geometry seemingly much greater than their hunter-gatherer lifestyle would require. Here's a look at one of these homes, and I think there's geometry put into these. Central fire pit, kept people warm, and they also figure, yep, I'm going to say it, had some ritualistic purpose to it also. I will leave a link for this video below, but it has a diagram of the houses, trapezoidal, and the entrances all face the same direction. Here's how they broke those homes down into geometric patterns. And here they try to figure out what that represented. They place a skeleton over the figure here. And the hearth in the center of the home here had little statues nearby. Let's take a look at some of those. Now here's a look at a few of these. And what is all represented on these is up for anybody's interpretation, but maybe a phallic symbol on the one on the right. But these go back maybe 7, 8, 9,000 years. And there has been fish symbolism found on some of these. Here you can see the sculptures are decorated on front and back, carved. But there has been a lot of theories on these statues, and I guess even Eric Van Daniken has visited the site. Here is a mountain nearby where they have a special alignment, I guess, on a solstice where the sun comes up, it rises, goes behind the mountain again, and rises again on a special day. Here's some of the carvings from the video I'm going to leave the link to below. Now here is a website I will leave below. Fish symbolism, I guess a lot of carp, sturgeon, a lot of fish were caught here a long, long time ago. Look at some of the original research at the site, 1960. Here's how they think these houses looked. Here's another look at the site, excavated here at the museum from across the river. Now here's a video I'm just going to play a few clips from, some information on the site here from a shareable video. This was made in 2018. And I will leave the full link below. But this seems to be one of those sites where people lived in caves and then emerged and started living in houses right after the Younger Dryas period. And here's a graph I found very interesting. This blue period right here is the Younger Dryas period between 12,900 and 11,600 years ago. And he talks about Lepenski Vir and other sites. You notice here, they all emerge right after the end of the Younger Dryas period. So this is an important site that should give us some good information about a time period we know little about.
Okay, the Iron Gates, I call this a case of hunter-gatherer complexity. This is another complexity, it's another probably old-fashioned nowadays concept in hunter-gatherer studies. Let's begin with where the Iron Gates is. For those who may not be so familiar with that area, it's the section of the Danube Valley which straddles the border between Romania and Serbia, when effectively where the river Danube carves its way through the Carpathian Mountains. And this section of the river was dammed at this point here with the Iron Gates 1 down and Iron Gates 2 80 kilometers downstream. And archaeological surveys in advance of completion of those dams resulted in the recognition of some 55 sites with Mesolithic and or early Neolithic occupation on them. And if you study that in detail, which you won't have time to, you will see, in fact, that there are far more Neolithic sites there than there are Mesolithic. It's only about 20 sites of those 50-odd Mesolithic occupation. But interestingly, most of those sites with Mesolithic occupation also have early Neolithic occupation. So, in many cases here, you have long-term use, even if it was not necessarily continuous use, of the same sites. Now, all the work that was done in advance of construction of Iron Gates 1, which was the excavation of Lepenski Vir, Blazats, and one or two other sites, Queen of Tukulvi on the Romanian side, led to a particular view of the nature of Mesolithic settlement in the Iron Gates, which I've tried to sum up in this slide. It was not necessarily the view of the excavators, but it was the review of outside observers, people like Ruth Tring and Barbara Wojtek, that one could see a kind of trajectory beginning in the late glacial, where people were nomadic hunter-gatherers using cave sites, moving around, and then gradually, or at some point during the Holocene, you started to get the establishment of fishing villages on the bank of the Danube, and from that point onwards, there's what Trevich called the Lepenski Vir culture, and Vasily Barans called the Scala Kladovic culture, because those were the sites they were digging. We have this idea of increasing complexity culminating in sites like Lepenski Vir.
Here are some more of the carvings and the fish symbolism. Now, they caught and ate a lot of fish, but if this culture emerged right after the Younger Dryas period, remember we have images coming from ancient Sumer of these fish beings carrying these handbags forward. Does the fish symbolism come from something in their daily life, or does it come from a creation story from their culture? Well, I really wonder about that. But here he just talks about that briefly in this lecture. Let's just listen. I'll get back to you at the end here.
It's not my term, I think Dusan Boric uses this term, fish-related symbolism. And this, along with the increase in dependence on fishing, we see this fish-related symbolism coming into the Iron Gates. It's reflected, in fact, in the presence of cyprinid teeth in burials. Dusan Boric and Manuela Cristiani wrote about this in the context of Blazat, and this is a little reconstruction where these pharyngeal teeth, or the tops of them, broken out of the pharyngeal bone of carp, or a particular species of carp, are probably sewn. We know they were sewn onto skin or textile clothing or garments. And it wasn't just for burial. They found in burials, but it wasn't just for burial, because these things that we've shown are very, very heavily worn, and they must have been worn over a long, long period in life. And then, of course, the other end of the scale, you've got the carved boulders from Lepenski Vir. And all this is a late phenomenon. This comes in about 7,200 BC, about 1,000 years before the beginning of farming. So this goes along with the isotope evidence for increased emphasis on fishing.
I will leave the full link to that video below, but Lepenski Vir, pretty fascinating place. These stone statues, what did they represent? Seems like this place got developed right after the end of the Younger Dryas period. What were hunter-gatherers or an early culture doing with this knowledge of sacred geometry? That's a good question. The fish symbolism, was that something from their daily life, or is that where their creators came from? A great flood? Is that a good question? I suppose. That is my video on Lepenski Vir. I will leave the links below. But this is a place I knew little about up until a few days ago. Continuing to bring you unknown sites from around the world. That's one of them that I thought was pretty important. Hope you thought that was cool, and you all have. Very nice day.